John McMullen, 97.3 ESPN.com, covers the Eagles and, of course, national columnist, FanRag Sports, NFL. A lot of Eagles stuff today because, Doug Pederson spoke today, and he said some very interesting things, a little forthcoming with some things which he typically isn't. But a lot happened at the NovaCare Center today as Doug Pederson got out there. This is the final 2 days here, today and tomorrow?
Yes, final 2 days of OTAs, and then minicamp is next week, and then off until training camp, which starts July 24th.
Yes.
That was official today.
So July 24th is when Eagles training camp will open. That was, announced today. So we are about a month and, 2 weeks away from the start of Eagles training camp. Wild. All right, let's get into some of the stuff from Doug today because I thought he really brought out some things to discuss here, one being the running backs. You know, the first question right out of the chutes was, hey, man, you got a lot of running backs out here. You can move the formations around. And how many times in the past have we heard questions, well, why don't they put Sproles and Matthews on the field at the same time? You know, how come they can't put two backs out there? So did he give a crack into how he plans on using really the four guys that he has?
Yeah, I think it's easy to do in OTAs, and they have this pony formation. It's what they call it. They've been using with Darren Sproles and Donnell Pumphrey on the field at the same time. I don't know how you can do that in the regular season. My concern with the Eagles running back situation is it's almost, if you look at the players and you look at what they do, you're almost signaling to the defense what you plan to do. In other words, when LeGarrette Blount, who, by the way, wasn't at practice again today, and that's a little surprising because I think 3 out of the 4 open practices to the media, he has not been on the field, but he doesn't catch the football. So you're kind of signaling to the other team, hey, we're going to run it here. And when Darren Sproles comes in, you have the ability to run it, but most likely you're going to become a passing team. So I think that's my biggest concern. People get very excited about exotic formations, and certainly Doug has a ton of them. And it's interesting because as we went through the Chip Kelly regime, exotic formations, they had one. That was it. The Eagles have a ton of formations. That's not the problem. For people that want Donnell Pumphrey on the field with Darren Sproles, it may sound good in theory, but, at some point somebody's got to block somebody. And when you have too many players on the field that can't block, you have an issue.
And that goes into short yardage. They've been really struggling in that spot, and he kind of talked about it, different formations, 4th and 2. I think the question was asked with Carson Wentz, keeping the ball last year, and he kind of talked about Blount really helping them out in that area. He certainly acknowledged having Blount gives them something they didn't have last year.
Yeah, that's true. If you have a 4th and 1 situation, the whole stadium can know LeGarrette Blount's going to get the football. He's probably going to get it anyway. So I don't think that's a concern. A lot of times you can outthink yourself in those types of situations, and now the Eagles have a really, really good short yardage back. So I think from that standpoint, you understand as long as he's on the field, they're going to be improved in that area of the game. I think they were 24th in the NFL in those kinds of situations. So obviously that's got to improve, and it should improve. But as a whole, I think it's an improved group, the running backs, and I think it's going to be Blount and Darren Sproles carrying the water, so to speak, and then you'll have a little Wendell Smallwood mixed in, and maybe you can get Donnell Pumphrey on the field on occasion. But I think, as I said yesterday on the show, I think this is going to be more of a redshirt year for him, getting him geared up for a big role in 2018.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, John. I believe he was asked about Blount's ability to catch the ball out of the backfield, and he was asked, is this something that he can do later on in his career? And Doug kind of said, yeah, he's actually a pretty good pass catcher. So do you think that's something that you will see the Eagles try to utilize him in that role?
No, I don't think. I mean, Doug's not going to insult one of his players, and that's what that's about, and it's understandable. But, I mean, LeGarrette Blount has been in this league for a long time. He doesn't catch the football. He's not a good pass receiving back. I think what he was trying to say is a little better than we thought is probably what he really meant to say. And the fact that Doug likes to throw the football so much, maybe he will get more than the 10 catches he normally does. But if it would be past 20, I would be stunned.
John McMullen with us, our Eagles insider here on 97.3 ESPN. Do you take Doug at his word, John, that the team had no interest in Macklin? It's a very un-Pederson-like fashion that he shot that down pretty quickly.
Yeah, I do take him at his word. I don't think they have any interest in Jeremy Macklin, although he left Baltimore today without a deal. And if this keeps going on, left Buffalo without a deal, left Baltimore without a deal. If he continues to run through these cities and he's still unemployed, maybe you revisit that situation. But, hey, the Eagles like their receiving group. They think it's much improved. They brought in a bunch of new bodies that we've talked about. And those are the guys he's going to go with. And right now they don't have room for Jeremy Macklin. So it's not a surprise they're not interested in him. I think the only way they would is if he went to the NovaCare complex himself and knocked on the door and said, please let me in. I mean, they're not going to make any calls because their wide receiver position is filled. And there's a lot of, obviously, not only Alshon Jeffrey and Torrey Smith, but you also have Mac Hollins and Shelton Gibson. And there's a lot of bodies there, and they don't really need Jeremy Macklin right now.
Torrey Smith, who may be a cheaper and better version of what Jeremy Macklin is right now. We're talking to John McMullen. Let's stick with wide receiver, John. Any concern with Jordan Matthews and his knee issue right now? Where do you think he is right now physically? Because that knee continues to be an issue.
No, he's fine. Saw Jordan in the locker room after practice. He was held out again. I don't even think he'll practice at minicamp. If you ask me today, I mean that's what the spring is about. If you're healthy, you go out there and play. But if there's even the slightest tweak, you hold the player out. And Doug said today, if this was the regular season, he'd not only be practicing, he'd be playing. So they're being overly cautious. He's a veteran player now. He doesn't really need all that much work. And I think it's been in a weird way, it's been a positive because Nelson Aguilar, again, showed up today. He had the play of the day, which erupted cheers from the sidelines of his peers. He caught a bomb down the middle from Carson Wentz. And he's been playing in the slot with Jordan Matthews not there, and he's having a very good OTA session as a whole. All 10 practices.
A lot of new bodies at wide receiver, John. That's been pretty well documented on the people they've picked up. How does Doug see the chemistry with the new wide receivers and Wentz sort of developing right now?
Yeah, well, he said it was one of the most exciting parts of OTAs thus far is to see how much those guys have kind of meshed together. And the improvement is basically what he's talking about. I mean, the talent level of that group has just increased exponentially to, last year we talked about Jordan Matthews as the top receiver on this team, and now he's number 3. So that tells you that's a domino effect. And if you're formerly your best receiver is now your third best receiver, and you go on down, your second best receiver is your number 4. Your third best receiver is probably not even going to make this team. So it's really probably on paper, at least, the most improved unit on the Philadelphia Eagles right now.
No Paul Turner sightings out there this year?
No, you're not.
Is he even on the? Is he even there? Is he there?
Yeah, he's there. Yeah, but I mean, he's
any
buried,
Bryce? Is there a Bryce Treggs sighting out there?
Bryce Treggs, sure. Bryce is there. They're all there, but nobody talks about them. Why does nobody talk about them? Because they're not relevant. Because they're not going to play and they're not going to make this team.
including a couple guys, John, that are trying to make the conversion from quarterback to wide receiver in college. And I know Doug was asked about those guys today, one of them being Ward. And when I see the name Ward, you think about guys that played quarterback in college and then went on to be great receivers. Hines Ward was probably the best college quarterback that ever played receiver. I don't think Greg Ward is in that category, but do those guys have any shot at making the team? Do they stick them on the practice squad and try to develop them?
Well, yeah, Greg Ward's one of the guys who he played quarterback at Houston and is making the transition this year as an undrafted rookie. I got a chance to talk to him, and he's just a tremendous athlete, as you can imagine. Generally, that's the case when you have quarterbacks making the move to wide receiver. And Paul Watford from last year, who's got more size, and he was on the practice squad last year, and I think Ward is earmarked for the practice squad this year. I don't know if you can keep them both. And I just see, even though Watford has more size, there's just a little bit more explosiveness to Ward. And right now, I would say, no, he's got no chance to make 53. But I'd say he's a very, very good chance of making the practice squad.
Sports Bash, 97.3 ESPN. You're hearing John McMullen from 97.3 ESPN.com. He also covers the league nationally for FanRag Sports NFL. You can read all his national coverage there and his Eagles coverage on our website, 97.3 ESPN.com. And, John, on the defensive side of the ball, any update on Sidney Jones, by the way? Has anybody seen him kind of hobbling around the complex up there?
No, he's not here. He's in
is he one of those trimester guys?
Yeah,
quarterlies?
He's in the quarter system with Washington, same as Elijah Qualls. So he's not here, but he will be here supposedly for mini camp. So we'll get a chance to see him next week. He did get the boot off, so that's a positive, and he continues to rehab. But it's going to be a while, and he's certainly not going to be ready to do anything even early in training camp. So. But he's progressing in the right direction, and that's all expected. I think it is a disappointment that he did go to one of those Pac-12 schools, though, because you'd prefer to have him at the NovaCare complex rehabbing there. But it's an NFL rule. There's nothing the Eagles can do about it.
Yeah, they got to change that rule. They got to try to figure out something there. Sports Bash 97.3 ESPN. I did hear Doug get asked about the rookies, and he kind of singled out Rasul Douglas as one of the guys. In fact, that was the first guy that he mentioned. Douglas, Pumphrey, and Derek Barnett, who apparently had a pretty good day today. I saw a lot of people. Yeah,
Lane Johnson a lot today, right, John? Derek Barnett was
making Lane Johnson look like a turnstile.
and by the way, Lane was. He was upset at his locker after practice, and there are a lot of guys. Jason Kelsey was cursing at Vinnie Curry at one point in practice. It was a spirited practice today, and Derek Barnett got the best of Lane Johnson on a number of occasions. And all Lane said about that, he gave him, he lauded him, but he said, "Wait till the pads come on." That's all Lane Johnson said, because Lane is a very, very big guy and a very strong guy. And, basically when you have no pads and you're not allowed to hit, you take away a lot of the strength of his game, whereas Derek Barnett's a 259-pound guy. So his point is, hey, nice job, rookie, but it's probably not going to last.
Although Lane probably had the quote of the day, right, John, when he said this is the best team best team look that I've seen since I've been here, not talking out my blank.
Yeah, he's very colorful, Lane. Not talking out of his ASS. But, yeah, I mean, we're in OTAs, and I think you always talk about Major League Baseball and spring training and hope, and the same thing is true with football and in the off season. 32 teams. Well, I should say 30. You should never count Cleveland and the New York Jets. But, about 30 teams think they can go to the Super Bowl right now, and the Eagles are one of them. So that's We'll see.
Yeah.
On one hand,
What do you say? This is the best we've looked?
He said this is the best I've seen the team look since I've been here. Not talking out my Ace Ventura body part.
But I will say that
Think
other quote about Derek Barnett is wait till the pads come on. It's the same thing with the team. Wait till the pads come on before you make that kind of decision.
Yeah. Well, I like what he has to say there. Good.
I would have
verbose.
liked it if he Jim carried it.
Yeah.
Actually grabbed his keister and said, excuse me, can I?
May I ask you a question? Good question in terms of Doug Pederson. Somebody asked him today, hey, did you take the chance this offseason to kind of go back and judge yourself? Like, are you going to be aggressive? Any sort of self-autopsy there, I think was the way that it was
I would have said
questioned.
self-evaluate.
Right. Did you open your body up and go back through it to see what you
right.
But, and then the follow-up was like your aggressiveness. And I thought Pederson seems more comfortable up at the podium this year.
Yeah, I mean, I think he is. I've said that since the beginning. The head coach in the NFL is really, there's no practice for it until you get there, so you kind of learn on the job. And one of the things, obviously, that you have to do that you don't have to do as much as the coordinators deal with the media and the constant questions, and Philadelphia's probably worse than anywhere else. So he is getting better, and he is getting more comfortable in his own skin. And, that we can always talk about the aggression of coaches, and we all understand if those plays work, he's a genius. If they don't work, he's an idiot. And sometimes they didn't work, so he's portrayed in that way. But he mentioned he's going to keep his aggressiveness and do what he thinks is good for the football team, and that's exactly what he should do.
John, I know he said Pater's not there. Johnson had been playing left. Big V is over on the right side. If that was the case on a Sunday during September, October, November, would that be the alignment? Would Vaitai, is he the next man up at right tackle if Jason Peters was out?
I think he is at this stage, but again, I think a lot of that is fluid, depending on what happens at left guard. I think when you get to the regular season, you essentially want to put out the 5 best linemen you can. And I think, for instance, if Isaac Seumalo wins that left guard job, well, then you have to seriously talk about playing Alan Barber at right tackle if you had to. But right now, as you said, Lane is at left tackle, Big V's at right tackle, but that all changes next week because Jason Peters is going to be here playing left tackle, and Lane Johnson's going to be back at his normal position. And when that is the lineup, that's one of the best tackle tandems in football. Yeah, that's what Frank Reich said last week, and he said not only that, we got our 2 backup guards. In fact, I put a poll question up on at Mike Gill Show on Twitter last night, and you got 4 guys that legitimately could start at left guard. You got Seumalo, you got Warmack, you got Barber, and you got Wisniewski. I mean, that's 4 guys at all. You would not have a big problem if any of those 4 guys started, would you? Yeah, and how did that? When I saw you tweeted that poll, and at the time I looked at it, Chance Warmack was in front. 47%. The poll has still got 5 hours left, so you can vote at Mike Gill Show on Twitter. 47% Chance Warmack, 30% Isaac Seumalo, 13% Alan Barber, and 10% Stefan Wisniewski. But I guess it kind of shows you that people enjoy the potential more so than maybe a guy being more solid. Yeah, it really does. I mean, even this OTA, these sessions started with Seumalo at left guard with the first team. Slowly, as we've gone on, Alan Barber's getting more time with the first team. He's their best left guard. There's a lot of things that enter into that, though. It's very, very unlikely that Allen's going to be here next season. He's aging, and you have a young player that you're trying to develop, and all of that enters into the equation when you talk about starters. And sometimes you do play a guy who you think may have a higher ceiling but might be behind a veteran right now. And I think that's what the Eagles are trying to do and trying to speed up the process. But it's probably going to come down to, say, Amalo or Alan Barber, and we'll see who wins. But they certainly have impressive depth. I mean, Frank Reich was right. It's probably the deepest position on the team.
All right. You can vote at that Mike Gill Show on Twitter, and we'll update that a little bit later on in the show. Sports Bash Live. Don't forget John McMullen at JF McMullen. A lot of NFL stuff out there. John's writing about it, and you can always check out his stuff at 973ESPN.com, which he wrote about the Eagles denying interest in Jeremy Maclin. Check out that piece on our website right now. John, you the man. We'll talk to you tomorrow, pal.
All right. Thanks, guys.